Right then, hello. My name's Stephen Grinnell. I've got two businesses. I've got an online business and an offline business. Um, I work at a clinic in Stratford, which I'm really busy at, and I've forgotten a couple of bits for tonight already because I was still at the clinic. But this live is all focused on online support for plantar fasciitis, which is mixed. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. Um, if you're like me, you've had plantar fasciitis, you do some research. The first place you look is the internet. What are the options? Um, what can you do? Where can you go? What can fix this? And plantar fasciitis is one of those things, it sort of creeps up on you. There isn't that many acute instances where people do something where they jump off something or fall over and damage the fascia in their foot. It tends to be something that happens over a period of time, or they've done a sudden or unusual activity. And when I say sudden or unusual, I mean suddenly went running or a long walk or something else, or wore some very different footwear where it started to damage the fascia. Now, the fascia is in the back part of the foot. It goes across the bottom and it's linked into the heel. So it is really, really painful. Part of the reason it's so painful is that when you stand up, which a lot of people struggle with first thing in the morning, all the body weight comes down, and then the online support for plantar fasciitis is quite mixed. Some of it's quite good, some of it's not so good, and some of it's confusing, and it tends to be very product led. So one of the challenges is that when you've got plantar fasciitis, you've invariably damaged it over a period of time. Most people that I see and that I've worked with, it's something that's been progressive, so it's not suddenly happened. There is some more acute cases where somebody's had a fall or they've done something quite extreme, which started and was a catalyst. But a lot of the time, it sort of creeps up, maybe from some sort of activity. It can be sporting, it could be doing a long walk, it could be jumping off something, it could be something as simple as falling over or getting caught kneeling down, doing an activity. Now, a lot of the focus online is looking at products, and usually the first product that people look at is something like this, some sort of insole. And the idea being is that it supports your arch, and it supports obviously your foot, takes some of the loading off, so some of the pressure, which the idea being is obviously in doing that, it will help reduce the pain and obviously allow your body to heal. Now, within that it works to an extent. Some people have had good success with insoles, but the majority of times the insole actually works as a crutch for the foot. So that sounds like it's exactly what you want, but the problem is it reduces all the muscle tissue. So all the complex muscles of your feet aren't being used because they're being supported by this insole. Now, the challenge with that is that's great if it's really, really severe. That works really quite well. But all the insoles are generic and they do a lot of arch support and other things. But they don't take into account the shoes you put in them in, how old the shoes are, how worn they are, and those sort of variables. So it's quite mixed on the impact and the positivity with them. But I see people on a daily basis and I look at the insoles and there's a vast array of options. Also, people can have sort of custom made orthotics. And again, they work in the same principle, a lot better, a lot more support, obviously. But the main focus is they're all designed for when you're actually standing. They're not designed to mold and support your foot when you're actually walking because you alter the loading. And that's really quite an important sort of feature. Now, when you stand up first thing in the morning, obviously you stand up and your foot really hurts. You get out of bed. As you stand up, one of the challenges is the pain goes up as you put your foot down. Part of the reason for that, if I use a trainer, because I've forgotten my foot to bring home, if you've got a trainer here, so you sleep and your foot's in this position, when you stand up, it's got to be in this position, and all the loading comes down through the heel area. Now, the problem when you stand up and put all your loading on, it's about 90% of your body weight. So it's going from zero or very, very limited sort of pressure to 90% of your body weight. And it's all proportional. So if you're heavier, it doesn't make any difference to if you're lighter. The load is the load. And your ankle is a second class lever. So think of it like a wheelbarrow. So the ball of your foot and your heel, they interrelate together like a wheelbarrow with the wheel at the front and the handles at the back, and obviously the load in the middle. And if you've used a wheelbarrow, you'll know that you can lift a lot of load with it. So that's why when you sleep, everything shortens because your foot's offset, it's not 90 degrees. When you stand up, you get a big increase in pain. And part of the reason is then obviously the muscles are fatigued and they're not supporting the fascia. And the fascia itself is got little mini tears in it and it's actually pulling away from the bone. So you can have things like heel spurs and other stuff develop over time. Now, when you do more research, you look and you go, okay, right, what else can we do? Right, YouTube. YouTube's a really good place. I use YouTube myself. There's some fantastic stuff on there. But a lot of the problem is that the movements and activities are more towards the end of your rehabilitation cycle. So it's not that they're a problem. It's not that they're wrong necessarily. They're just in the wrong sequence. So a lot of the movements are quite extreme and they're quite advanced. So they're sort of movements that you would do right at the end, or they're movements that you'd use to strengthen your calf muscles or to strengthen your feet when you haven't got a plantar fasciitis problem. And that's the same for things like books. So I do a lot of research, I do a lot of reading. So you've got a book here on plantar fasciitis, and then two of the actual rehab movements that are listed in the book are here. So you're looking at sort of gluteal movements and then sort of lunges. Again, the movements themselves aren't necessarily an issue, but they're too extreme when you've got plantar fasciitis, because what they do is they make the fascia weaker and weaker and weaker. They actually tear it. Now, when the fascia's healed, they're a great way to build up and strengthen some of the muscles of the foot. But obviously, you've got to go through that healing phase first. And the last sort of area that people do is a lot of things like hot and cold treatment, which again you do for quite a lot of tissue injuries. And the idea being is that the hot and the cold look at stimulating blood flow. So it alters blood flow so that you can either increase it or decrease it to either bring more inflammation and to help healing the tissue or to take some of that away. So those sort of features make quite a big difference. It's not that it's no good and it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that obviously the limitations of that are it's quite short-lived. So hot and cold treatment's quite good to use at the end of the day if you had a busy day, say you work and you stand on your feet, or you've done quite a lot of walking and you've got quite a lot of fatigue. Hot and cold treatment can provide some quite good relief, the same as elevating and things like that, sort of common sense stuff. Now, when you look at these sort of three things, you go, okay, we're working, we've got these options, we've got these sort of base things to start with. You then look at going to, well, it's not getting any better, it's actually getting a bit worse. So you compensate your life a little bit. So you might walk differently, you might do longer journey, you might do shorter journeys, you might drive more and walk less and move less and think about what you're doing. And then what people start to do is looking at things like shoes and trainers. So they might change to a different pair of shoes and they might have a big thick heel on them so it's really really cushioned. They might stop wearing these because they get really really uncomfortable, so walking boots. And they might then look at doing stuff like yeah, changing their whole life. And when you start doing that, obviously you start reducing your mobility because obviously then the foot's limiting you. And that's when people tend to really start looking at how can I change? What can I do differently? How can I make it better? So when you want to look at making something better, the first thing you do is, right, we'll go to the doctors. Now, the doctor has really two options. They can either send you for physio, and they tend to show you more advanced movements. Some of the movements are quite good, but a lot of them are, again, quite stressful on the fascia. It's not that they don't work the ankle, it's not that they don't work the calf muscle, it's not that they don't help the foot. It's just that it's too advanced at that point. Then you go back to the other stage and say, okay, what can I do? And the doctor will say, we can offer some injections. And again, injections aren't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Now, so within all of that, you've got all of this online support, plus obviously some of that face to face, and people go and have other treatments and other options and stuff as well. So, what do I know? Why are people listening to me? Well, I've been looking at plantar fasciitis for over 12 years. I've had a pain and rehabilitation clinic for that long, and I've treated a lot of people, sort of around 2,500 in that time. Lots of different injuries, so not all plantar fasciitis, but different things: backs, knees, hips, shoulders, necks, all sorts of stuff. And over the last 2 years, I've done a really, really big focus on looking very much at how can I help plantar fasciitis, because I was getting more and more and more people coming to see me with that problem, sort of lower limb problems, issues with ankles, issues with feet, tendon issues. So there was a real sort of mix all around that area. And it made me really look at, well, okay, how can we help? What can we do? So it started me on a journey to do a lot of research, and a lot of that research was, okay, well, I'll try this with this person, I'll try that with that person, I'll try this with somebody else. And we got really, really odd results. There was no consistency. So I started to try and have a level of like a research project, really. So I started to develop a system, and in developing that system, I found that there were flaws in that system. So it wasn't working as effectively as it could do. So again, it was a little bit inconsistent. And I sort of found, well, okay, what are the key problems that everyone has? Everyone comes to see me, standing and walking. Those are the two key problems. Okay, so what is that as a base issue? Where's the base problem? And what I found out was that it's all to do with how you load your body. So it's how you load your feet. And one of the ways to actually make a difference for loading your feet is to say, okay, we've got to change something, because if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to have the same problems. So what I looked to do was saying, okay, lots of people that are coming to see me, they might have a plantar fasciitis for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. They all compensate in how they moved. So they all had certain ways of doing things. And they sort of showed me lots of different things that they'd tried, things that they'd seen on the internet, challenges they had with things like stairs or even just getting in and out of cars. So what I started to then look at was, okay, if we've got this loading issue, we know there's 90% that goes through the heel. What are people doing to change that? And that started me on a journey to look at how you can alter somebody's loading as part of their rehabilitation. So to actually help improve. Now, the problem is that plantar fasciitis, as you know, is really, really painful. So it can be varied within the day, and it tends to find that you have increases and decreases. Sitting to stand is actually quite a challenging movement. But then you have other elements and other movements then which also cause issues like kneeling down, picking something up, lunging and reaching for something. It might be using ladders and all sorts of odd stuff that also then highlight other challenges. So we've got this loading issue. We've got to change the loading. Now, I've talked quite a lot about people with how they stand, how they walk, how they move. So a lot of people stand with their feet in slightly odd positions, so they're not dead square. So that's one thing. A lot of people walk with plantar fasciitis on the midfoot, so they're sort of round on the arch of your foot or on your toes. Very few people with plantar fasciitis, for obvious reasons, walk on their heels. So as they walk, they do this. They also take short strides. Okay, so we're getting some consistency with loading. So how do you manipulate the loading to help? Well, you can do lots of things. You can obviously square the feet up. You can alter the distance and how somebody stands, whether they stand offset with one leg forward, one leg back, whether they stand with their feet slightly further apart or their feet slightly closer together. And again, we're looking at twisting and moving. By all those small movements, that alters how your foot's loaded. Okay, that's great. That can maybe help reduce the pain. Now, the problem that people have is if you're in lots of pain, all you can think about is the pain. So it's about altering stuff when it's in less pain. That makes sense. You're not in acute pain all the time. So obviously there's periods where it's lower pain. Okay, how can I stop going into an acute episode? And that again links back into how you're walking, how you're moving. So I've developed a three-phase rehabilitation package, and I've called it 369. And part of the reason for that is linking into where the focus is. So from a module point of view, to actually help people online, it's looking at, okay, we've got 3 modules, then 6, then 9. And that varies and increases in this sort of position, so you can do more and more things as the pain reduces. So the idea being is that if you're looking in modules 1 to 3, that initial phase, it's all about standing and walking short distances, because the pain's still quite high and the fascia is still quite hurting. So we've got to look at changing things quite fundamentally so that you can reduce the pain when you stand and walk. And obviously, as you're doing that, you're learning some new skill, which is then helping you stop damaging your fascia so it doesn't hurt as much, and it starts that healing cycle in a positive way. The next phase, those next 6 modules, is all looking at walking, but walking in all different situations with stairs, going upstairs, downstairs, moving around, say something like a kitchen, walking longer distances, altering your gait cycle so that you progressively start off in a very controlled way so that you don't put too much loading through the fascia, and then gradually increase your strides, increase your speed. And there's got a lot of techniques and stuff within the program to actually help that. And it's all video elements, so you can follow all of the videos along. And the final phase is looking at loads of different movements, from things like jumping, standing, stairs, progressive exercises to help strengthen things up, stretches, all sorts of movements. And that's to allow you to do, as I call it, everything else. So all the other movements, that might be if you're a netball player, you want to play netball, or you want to play badminton. I see a lot of tennis players. But all of these movements have different challenges. You're 20% more likely, from a population point of view, to have plantar fasciitis if you're a runner. And a lot of that is how you run and obviously how you move. So within that, you've got to also alter how you run and how you move. Now, linked into the program, there's quite a lot of stuff online about, oh, we can do this, be fixed in 5 minutes. I work very much on focus on a realistic recovery. So the idea being is that I've got a structured program that you can follow, and it's a course and everything, and it all works online. But the idea is that we're looking at around 6 weeks. Now, 6 weeks isn't a long time, but it's not 6 days. It's not 6 hours. I'm being realistic. So I'm looking at the idea of how long it takes for tissue to repair itself. Now, if you think about other injuries, you fall over and you break your arm. What happens is that your body goes through a period of intense rest so that it can rebuild the tissue. All the hospital does is actually set your arm so it's in one position, so you can't move it, puts it all in plaster, and then 6 weeks later, it takes the plaster off and you can move your arm and it's all healed. So you haven't done anything to it or done anything special or anything else. All you've done is let your body do what it naturally does. Now, the challenge with plantar fasciitis is that you need to also walk, move, get everything together. So you've got to get up in the morning, go to work, take the kids to school, come back, cook dinner, go shopping, all of those life activities. And that involves standing up and walking. When you've got a broken arm, it's all isolated and in plaster and you can't move it. So your body can just heal it. If you didn't have your broken arm in plaster and moved it around, it would never heal. And that's the problem with plantar fasciitis. It gradually gets worse and worse because you're not altering what you're doing to help the body heal. So lots of courses and other bits that I've looked at offer bonuses and extra content, extra information. I've looked at bonuses. I've got bonuses as well. I've sort of joined the crew. But the bonuses are really, really focused. So the first element of bonuses, you're looking at mindset and goals. So it's looking at, well, okay, what do you want to be able to do? Rather than just, I don't want any pain, or I want to be able to do normal things. What are normal things? So it's making you really think about what are the sort of things that you want to be able to do. And that's important because the second bonus is looking at tracking progress, because we're very quick to, I want zero pain when I'm in extreme pain. So I just want it to stop. Okay, well, that's going to be quite difficult to happen, even with things like injections and everything else or medication. It's really hard to go from high pain to low pain. It's usually progressive. And we don't always get the result straight away. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And the body's got to catch up and heal, hence the realistic recovery. So tracking progress is really important because it's looking at where you started, what you couldn't do, and then the transition to what you can do. So suddenly you start seeing the progress and you're seeing how things improve. Now, if you're at a sort of 6 to a 9 on a pain scale, which is high and quite severe, if you get yourself down to a 3 to a 6, that's quite significantly lower, but it's still painful. And where people struggle without having that goal and without looking at the mindset and without looking at tracking, they don't see the progress that they've made. Oh, well, I can do all these activities now. I can now walk for 15 minutes before things get painful. I can now stand for 2 hours, whereas before I was struggling standing for 10 minutes. No, you can't stand all day yet, but you've made a lot of progress. So I talk about things like magnitude of improvement. Now, a lot of the things that I'm trying to alter with people link into the final bonus, which is all on habits. So these habits obviously are things that you do in a structured way and you do them automatically. So nobody taught you how to walk. You learn how to recover when off balance. And that's called walking. So you put one foot in front of the other to stop yourself falling over. You put that foot down and then bring your other foot and then your other foot and then your other foot. And then you gradually modify your movement to be more efficient. But you're doing that as a 1-year-old. You're not having any coaching. You're not talking about where your foot's being placed, how square it is, pushing off with your toes, or any of those sort of coaching elements. So it's all about regaining balance. And this program really breaks down how you move, how you need to alter moving so that your body can reduce the pain and start healing itself. And then you have all of these positive movements so that you don't damage the fascia again. So the idea is it's a long-term fix. So the habits bonus is explaining how habits work. Now, if you make 1% improvement on a daily basis over a year, you'll be 37 times better than you would be if you didn't change anything. But importantly, if you don't change anything, potentially you could be 37 times worse. And that's just looking at 1%. So if you look at that, you think, okay, I've got a package. There's a really structured rehabilitation program. It's in 3 phases. I can see that. And people might be in different phases and elements. I can see how the bonus structure works. So there seems to be a lot of logic within all of that because it all pulls everything together and it has a nice little package piece. And that is all the work that I do within my clinic. So this has taken me about 2 years to pull together. And that's working with lots of clients. I see 9 to 10 people a week with plantar fasciitis, and I spend a lot of time with them. And they've all got different nuances. They're all different ages. They've got different outcomes, different challenges. So everybody's life is different, and that's presented lots of issues. And what I've done is I've worked with all the variables to come up with quite a tight program. But the reason it's got lots of modules is because there's quite a lot of what ifs. And the challenge I have is I'm overworked. So I have a busy clinic. There's only so many hours in the day. I spend a lot of time with people. And I wanted to do an online program to be able to help more people because this is a real sort of problem area. And then when I've done all the research on it, I couldn't believe how problematic it was. So a sort of clinic treatment and a big sort of program with me is around £997. So it's a lot of time from me, a lot of accountability, and it's 2 people coming together to work to fix a problem. It's totally private. It's very, very supportive. There's a lot of medical treatment and stuff that happens within the clinic. So how can you compress that down as an online course to look at it as a project that people can follow? So obviously then within that, what I've looked at is said, okay, we've got all of these movements, we've refined lots of these things. Let's record it so that people can help. So it's a supportive aid. So it actually links in and works in that sort of way. So the course program is £97. That's quite heavily reduced. It's £97 for the first 100 people that purchase. The price will then go up and up and up from there because obviously as a program, it's quite intense. And I'm going to be adding to the program. So the program's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as obviously you add pieces to it so that the value of the program goes up and up and up. The other thing that I'm adding for this sort of launch event is to look at have some time with me. So to have that Zoom one-on-one time. Now, the difference with doing something where you're looking at online is that obviously your audience geographically is a lot bigger. So all of the people are further around. So it might be somebody's in Scotland or in Cornwall where normally they wouldn't even know about me or see anything about me. Whereas now they've got access to a program that can help fix their plantar fasciitis in 6 weeks. So within all of that, what I'm aiming for is to be able to help people and have that dialogue where people might be struggling. They go through the program and they're struggling with little bits. Okay, I'm here to help. So there's a Zoom call opportunity if people purchase in the next 10 days. Now, within that, I can't obviously commit if there's lots of people, there's time, and it might take a little bit of a break. But from my point of view, my commitment is to try and help as many people as possible. So, key things, you've got a three-phase recovery program. It's very, very structured. It's all related to research that I've done over the last 2 years. It looks very much at modifying and explaining changes. And the program explains every step of the way what you need to do and why you need to do it. So explaining, yes, this is why insoles aren't so good, but this is how you can improve your strength of your foot. Yes, this is a problem, but this is how you can improve it. So it's very, very structured, and it's all done in modular bases in bite-sized pieces. So my name's Stephen Grinnell from Energy Medicine, and I've recorded this, so it'll be going out for people to be able to watch, but also there'll be a link coming out for where you can purchase the product, have a look at it, have another little review, go through it, and obviously then help cure your plantar fasciitis.